Hello everybody and welcome to the Week in Review, where we take an unscripted look at the news from the week that was. This week we're going to start things off by looking at financial results. It's not the most entertaining subject, but it is relevant this week because both Sony and Microsoft have posted their yearly results, and they've been pretty good, at least as far as the video game sections of each company is concerned. Sony's Game and Network Services division has generated over $25 billion in revenue for the year, and that is a record for the company. On top of that, it has a new high for PlayStation Plus subscribers. We're up to 47.6 million users now, when last year it was 41.5 million, so that's not an insubstantial jump. And the PlayStation Network is generating a lot of money. $17.8 billion for the year, when last year it was only $12.8 billion. So the company is doing very, very well indeed. The PlayStation 5 has sold very well as well. It is actually setting records for the company, even though they've not had enough units to get out there. They have been able to sell through an awful lot. So it has been good for Sony. It's been a good launch for the console, and the company itself, as far as its game section is concerned, is in a very healthy position. Meanwhile, over with Xbox, the Xbox Series X is Microsoft's fastest selling console ever, even though stock is also limited for it. The gaming division saw revenues increase by 50% over the last 3 months alone to $3.53 billion. Hardware sales up by 232%. So it is also very good for Microsoft in terms of the software side of things. The content and services revenue, as they say, content and services revenue was increased by 34%. Although Microsoft doesn't report profits for gaming division specifically, it is, as an overall number, the numbers are up, at least in terms of the number of people that are using this stuff. So these are all good signs for both companies. It means, obviously the healthier a company is, the more it can invest in itself, and the more games that we get, the more services we can get, and it's just generally a better thing for a company to be in a healthy position in terms of what it can then do. So good news for both Sony and Microsoft. Next up, we have some great news if you happen to be a Castlevania fan. There was a game called Castlevania Resurrection in development for the Sega Dreamcast. It was going to be this 3D Castlevania game that was hopefully going to be the first great 3D Castlevania game. Fans of the series will probably know that the series has struggled in the past, or at least struggled in the past, to make the jump from two dimensions into 3 dimensions, and there was a fair bit of hope pinned on this Dreamcast 1 that it would be the first. Unfortunately, that was not to be. Konami cancelled it, and it has disappeared off the face of the planet until recently, where somebody somehow got their hands on the code and has made it playable. There's a link in the description below this video if you want to check it out for yourself, but you can now go and play an unoptimized build of a very incomplete Castlevania game, which I know doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, but if you're into your history of video games, then having these prototypes and cancelled games preserved is actually a really cool thing. I am a big fan of the Resident Evil series, for example. There was a Game Boy Resident Evil game in development that got cancelled right at the end of development, and for the longest time nobody could actually play that. But then somebody actually got their hands on the code, which was 90% done, and uploaded it to the Internet Archive, and I've actually since downloaded it and played it, and I really had a good time with it. I can see why it got cancelled because of a huge number of reasons. I mean, survival horror never was going to work on the Game Boy Color, but the fact that that game existed was really neat, and I had a great time playing it and experiencing that bit of history of this cancelled game. So it's good that they've done that with this Castlevania title as well, and if you are a fan of Castlevania, then you're probably going to want to check this out. It does look like it is it was cancelled very early on in its lifespan, so you are going to get a very raw game by the looks of things. But it really does look like it'd be a bit of fun if you're into your Castlevania stuff. So there you go. Enjoy. Okay, so for the third story this week, we've got some good news if you're a fan of The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann, the creative force and energy behind the whole series, has announced that he has completed the outline for the third game of the series. Now, this should not be confused with an announcement that a third game is being made, because a lot of times outlines, concepts, and scripts are written and then discarded, even in the video game world. So this is not a confirmation that there will be a The Last of Us 3, but there is at least the idea of a The Last of Us 3 in the minds of Neil Druckmann and the people at Naughty Dog. Now, I have to be careful when I say what I'm about to say, because I'm a fan of a lot of series that have a lot of sequels. For example, I love the Atelier series, and there are 13 Atelier games on the Nintendo Switch alone, so that is a lot. There's a lot of sequels. But we just have to face the reality that the games industry really does have a problem with sequels, and sequels do inhibit the creative energies of developers and publishers because they pigeonhole them into certain things. So even the Atelier series, which I love, you look at what Gust has done when it has broken away from that Atelier series, and there's a Blue Reflection, which I think is absolutely amazing, and until recently was never going to have a sequel. There's a couple of Knights of Azure games, and they're excellent. There's the Artanelico series, which is only 3 games, and they're also excellent. When Gust has been able to break away from the Atelier series, Gust has done some excellent work. And I made a tweet which was a bit of a throwaway, bit of sarcasm, but imagine if Shakespeare just wrote endless sequels to Romeo and Juliet, what would Shakespeare be remembered as today? Probably not the artist that he is, because one of the great appeals about Shakespeare is the breadth of stuff that he wrote, not just the one story. And the problem with the games industry is it is so focused on sequels and producing stuff that is commercially successful every single time that there are a lot of ideas that don't get made. I am sure the people at Naughty Dog could come up with some great creative stuff that isn't Uncharted or The Last of Us, but do they get the chance to? Probably not, because they're being constantly forced into creating more games down these existing commercially successful routes. So I would like to see less sequels being done, even if that means I miss out on a couple of Ateliers, if it also means that these creators get to be a little bit more creative. Next up, we have to talk about NFTs again, and I'm sorry to do that. I know we've been talking about NFTs the last couple of weeks, and it is getting exhausting, but NFTs are absolutely toxic. They're going to ruin the planet. The only people spending money on NFTs are grifters. The only companies making money from NFTs are grifters, and we do need to be across it, especially when it is an otherwise favorite company that is doing it, which is unfortunately the case this week. Sega has partnered with a company called DoubleJump.Tokyo to expand its NFT content globally. I can't stand saying that stuff, but that is what they are doing. And Double Jump Tokyo is a company that has worked with other Japanese companies around NFTs, including Square Enix. So this is not just Sega being naughty. This is an industry-wide thing. And it is easy to understand why the companies like Sega and Square Enix want to jump on with NFTs, because NFTs are effectively free money for a grift. It's free money for these companies. It's very easy to produce. The only downside is the horrible environmental impact that it has, but companies don't tend to care about that in capitalism, and that is what this is. This is just a route to free money of fans that Sega is taking advantage of. Once again, don't invest in this stuff. Even if you are a fan of Sonic and you see a Sonic NFT from Sega, do not buy it, because if you do so, you are just encouraging these companies. And again, NFTs have a catastrophic impact on the environment, and if we don't get in control of this stuff really quickly, it is going to exacerbate climate change very rapidly. In fact, and this is really hard to say because I love Sega, I love Yakuza, I love Square Enix, I love Final Fantasy, but if they're going to go further and further into this NFT stuff, we're going to have to reconsider whether we support the entire company, because the only thing these companies understand is consumer dollars, and if consumers, the only way to stop them from investing in this NFT stuff is if their consumers start telling them, well, we're not going to buy your products if you're going to do this. Of course, as a one-person thing, that's not going to be much of a campaign that's going to shift the needle, but people have got to be aware of what NFTs are doing to the planet. People have got to be willing to start making a stand about it, being vocal about it, and telling these companies what they think about it, because otherwise it's going to be too late before we realize what it's really doing to us. Okay, so to finish off this week, we're going to be talking about film. It doesn't really have anything to do with video games, but this one gave us a good laugh, so we just had to talk about it. Citizen Kane has the reputation for being the great film of all time, the most important film, the best film, so on and so forth, yada yada yada. In fact, if we were to talk about video games, we would talk about how the games industry is constantly on its hunt for its Citizen Kane of games. The film has that reputation for just being the great work of art in the film industry, much like the Mona Lisa is the great painting, or Romeo and Juliet is the great play. Anyway, Citizen Kane actually lost its 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes this week because an 80-year-old negative review, one of the very few negative reviews of that film, resurfaced, and Rotten Tomatoes, being the dutiful aggregator that it is, did implement that review into the algorithm, which dropped Citizen Kane from 100% to 99%. Meanwhile, there is still a film that has a 100% rating, and that is Paddington 2, as in the sequel to the Paddington Bear film. It still has a 100% rating, which means that Paddington 2 is now, as far as Rotten Tomatoes is concerned, the greatest film of all time, the highest rated film, the most important film, if you consider the review scores to be the be-all and end-all, which of course is not the case. I mean, I love Paddington 2, I think it's an excellent film, but it isn't quite the great work of art that Citizen Kane is, of course. Not that that matters, Paddington 2 isn't trying to be the great work of art either, but, you know, critical reviews don't necessarily match with the artistic value of a work. It's more just a bit of fun, but it is amusing to see. It is very amusing to see. The Twitter response to the news has been nothing short of hilarious. And it is there is an interesting little parallel there, because in the video game industry, there is also a 100% review, this time on Metacritic, for The House on Fata Morgana, which I think I mentioned in a previous video. It has a 100% score, and whereas in the film industry, people have kind of found this quite amusing, in the video game industry, there's been a lot of people that have been very upset that we critics dared to give a visual novel 100% aggregate score, so we've been copying it a bit ever since that happened. But yeah, it's all just fun, you know. People who take review scores too seriously are really missing the point. They're not really there as an indicator of raw quality and importance of a work of art. They're really just a guide or a discussion point, really. It's nothing more than that. They're just a discussion point. And this news this week regarding Citizen Kane and Paddington 2 certainly created a lot of conversation. And people had fun with it, so that was good to see. Anyway, that's enough for this video for this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. If you enjoy my videos, please do click that like and subscribe button. That way you will see them all as I upload them. And if you do enjoy my work, please consider backing me on Patreon. You can do so for $1 a month or more if you're feeling generous, and the support that you give me there will help me to continue to grow this channel and do more interesting things with it. In addition, you get a monthly magazine which is exclusive to Patreon backers. It's a 48-page magazine this month, and it's going to have all kinds of awesome content in it for you. So that's a good incentive to back me. Again, you can do so for as little as $1 per month. Alright, thank you very much. This is Friday, so have a great weekend, everybody. Play lots of games, and we will see you next week.